¿Son dominicanos, Boris?
Dominicano.
Eso se nota. Ay, perfecto. Yo quiero un café con leche y
Yo también. Café
la
con
misma
leche.
vaina.
Poco leche.
Azúcar.
How do you get down? How do you get ready?
I kind of throw myself head first into the community. I spend as much time as I can just hanging out, listening to people, talking to people. And it's a lot of that contact, a lot of that energy that really, gracias, that makes it all start.
On this episode of Cafecito, we are joined by proud Dominicano and decorated novelist Junot Diaz.
I actually don't mind looking super stupid. And so being curious and not minding looking stupid means that, you know, you can spend a lot of time just talking to people, building, asking questions.
Welcome to Cafecito. Welcome to the Nuyorican. We have a very special guest today, Pulitzer Prize winning author, activist, and educator, Junot Diaz.
Bro, thank you for having me, man.
Thank you for coming. What's your first memory of reading and writing?
When I immigrated to New Jersey when I was 6 years old, I'll never forget one of the first things that happened to me is that my librarian, I couldn't speak a word of English, she couldn't speak a word of Spanish, una gringa. My librarian gave me a tour of the library. And I'm a Dominican kid from Villa Juana, you know, uno de los barrios populares. There wasn't any libraries, nobody had books. The only book I ever saw was the Bible. And this woman takes me into this small little library, but to me it was like the Library of Alexandria. And she literally explained to me through hand gestures that all of these books were mine, that I could take them out anytime I wanted to, you know, but in certain limits. And that to me was an astonishment. You can draw a line from that moment to me right here, right now. And I believe it's the truest explanation of how I got here.
Coming from Santo Domingo to Jersey, and then later Rutgers, and now in academia. Can you talk about how navigating through those different worlds affects your work?
From the time I was young, I knew about switching worlds. I didn't know anything different. You know, I didn't immigrate when I was like 20 and already had a big old life in Santo Domingo. I immigrated real young. And so I always felt like every 5, 6, 7 years, some new world would take me. And the idea that we live in multiple worlds, the idea that a kid from Santo Domingo who lived in a house, had no electricity, really no running water, then grew up in a Jersey neighborhood right next to a huge landfill, and then was a kind of a commuter kid going to Rutgers College, working full time, that all those separate lives and the lives that I lead now as someone who's kind of a writer and who teaches part-time, that they could all live together in one person. I think that there are days where I'm sort of like, wow, this is nuts. But there are other days where I realize that this is most of us. Most of us have like 5 or 6 worlds inside of us, and that's just a given.
So how about we kick it, mommy? And she'll turn her head, which is her way of saying, I am too proud to acquiesce openly to your animal desires.
Your new book, This Is How You Lose Her. Can you talk about what motivated you to write this collection of short stories?
Well, I guess part of it was I wanted to write about the boys I grew up with, the boys that the world I belong to. How many of the dudes I know who are just straight güeros, man? You know, like man whores, I guess my students call them. Because, you know, you get a lot of stories from the other side, women who've dated these dudes and who are like, yo, these dudes are just the worst, they're this, they're that. And so I kind of wanted to just take a kind of the opposite side of the lens. And I think there's something interesting to that for me because it talks about manhood, it talks about what it means to be a Latino dude, what it means to be of African descent, and what it means to be all these things and to try to find love, to try to find a home in another person.
Oscar Wilde, amazing. You expect to conquer the world with that book?
Nah, I mean, books don't conquer worlds. Books conquer like one space on a shelf, maybe. Certainly not. Come on, I was writing a book about Dominican nerds in New Jersey. Who thinks that's a recipe for success? They're like, yeah, I got this. Nah, man, I wrote this book because it felt like the book I needed to write. And I was incredibly gratified, incredibly moved, startled that all the good stuff happened to the book and by extension happened to me.
The MacArthur Genius.
Yeah.
Were you shocked, surprised? How has that affected your life?
Well, I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, my family thinks that's really funny. They're like, you're the dumbest. My mom's like, you're the dumbest genius that has ever been named. And she's like, she just thinks that's a hoot. And la doña's like, este muchacho un genio, por favor. So it's been cool. I mean, it's been great. It's an enormous honor. But when it comes down to it, bro, these things don't mean much. Every day you got to get up and face the blank page. And the real challenge and the real reward for me is can I finish another book? And that's only in the practice. It's not in the applause.
What do you have to say to that young Latino that recognizes this voice or has observations, but also has reservations about expressing themselves, maybe in writing or in art?
It's tough, man. Listen, we don't live in societies that encourage people to be friends to themselves, to actually be a friend to yourself. How can you begin to practice this idea that these lives are all we got? Living other people's dreams is the worst idea, the worst way to spend these very unique temporary lives. And I always say, if you're young, yeah, it's hard out there. Yeah, you gotta work. Ain't nobody giving you anything. But if you work a little bit every day and you figure out how to be a friend to yourself, you can begin to find the dreams that you've always wanted. You can begin to achieve the goals that you set for yourself. And I think work and self-friendship are essential. And figuring that out, reaching out to people who will help you, is probably the best way to get on this road.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Right.
I'm Junot Diaz, and you're watching Cafecito on NBC Latino.